Don't you love being in a room full of literate people? It's great. We need to be reminded of that. So thank you for taking time out on a Saturday to come here today. So now you're wondering, who is this guy? Well, I am Danny Brassell. I'm on a mission to bring the joy back into education. I became a teacher because of the movie Stand and Deliver. Any of you ever see the movie Stand and Deliver? So I said, I'm going to be Jaime Escalante. So I was originally hired to teach 12th grade social studies in COMPTON, California. It's a community in South Central Los Angeles. Yeah, in the house, we represent it. All right, good. And they switched me from working with high school students to middle school students to upper elementary to lower elementary to pretty soon, instead of preparing students for college, I was coming home with snot marks on my kneecaps every single day. And what I learned is what works with a 12th grader does not necessarily work with a kindergartner. But what works with a kindergartner works with all age levels. I love working with little kids. I had some wonderful mentors, and they got me through it. I once had this principal, Mrs. Lucifer, and she used to ride into my classroom every day on her broom, but I had a guardian angel. Her name was Mrs. Turner. She was the woman that took me under her wing, and everything I ever needed to learn about teaching, I learned from Mrs. Turner. You couldn't find an odder couple than the two of us. And it was Mrs. Turner that taught me a system to bring joy into my classroom every single day, and hopefully I'll be able to impart some of that system to you today. So raise your hand if you'd like to learn how to get all students to read. Well, I know the secret. Reading should always be fun. You know, human beings are pleasure-oriented creatures. I'll give you an example. My wife and I were finishing dinner one night. My wife's like, you want some more green beans, honey? I said, oh, honey, I am stuffed. She said, we got chocolate cake for dessert. I said, just a small slice. You always find room for things that you like. That's why I know when I'm in a classroom and the bell rings and the kids don't hop out of their seats, that's a good reading teacher. Those kids want to finish whatever it is that they're reading. All right, now you have to understand, struggling readers are not illiterate, but they benefit greatly from your teaching assistant. So I thought I'd share with you a traumatic story from my childhood. When I was a kid, my mom used to read to me before we went to bed, and she liked this book that always started out Once Upon a Time. Fairly straightforward, except I didn't see the O. Because the O was a weird shape, it was in a black box, and it had vines all around it. And so Mom would say, okay, Danny, read to me, and I'd go, Once Upon a Time. I was a struggling and reluctant reader. Can I give you a teaching tip? Yes. 4 out of 5 struggling and reluctant readers are going to be boys. Boys and girls are very different. Girls will read books about boys. Boys won't read books about girls. Don't get me wrong, folks. I think Little Women is a wonderful book, but if you want a boy to read it, you better put diarrhea in the title. So today, what we're going to talk about is how to teach kids their ABCs. The reason I do that is because of the psychological rule of 7 plus or minus 2. Harvard did a study. By the way, whenever I cite research, I always say Harvard did the study. It sounds much more legitimate that way. So Harvard did a study. They found the typical human being can store 7 pieces of information in their short-term memory plus or minus 2 pieces of information. So what I want us to remember is if we really want kids to be excited about reading, we've got to remember the ABCs. We got to provide them with plenty of access to wonderful reading materials. We got to teach them the business of reading. And we got to create a culture that gets those kids excited about reading each and every day. So people always ask me, what is reading? So I went to kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd grade classrooms. I asked the kids, what is reading? Deshaun said, reading is what you do when there ain't a movie about it. Courtney said, reading is something my mom tells me I need to do. Jacob said, reading is when I go to the library with my mom and she sits me on her lap and we cuddle and giggle. Jacob's mom is doing an excellent job. So people always ask me, why is reading comprehension so important? To me, comprehension means making sense of whatever it is that you read. Comprehension is the heart of learning. You need to know something about me. I'm a highly competitive individual. When I became a teacher, I didn't want to be a good teacher. I wanted the school renamed after me. I wanted the superintendent erecting statues in my honor throughout the district. I wanted every other kid at my school at my windows going, oh, I want to be in there. Make your classroom library cooler than Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Jerry and I have done this together. I've made over 800 classroom libraries. It's got to appeal to the touch. It's It's got to be visually appealing. Let the kids eat and drink while they read. I like to eat and drink while I read. What I'm trying to do is create a sensory experience where kids always associate reading with relaxation. And always let the kids listen to music. Because I want classroom libraries that rock, that get those kids excited about reading all the time. So here's a riddle for you. What was your favorite textbook as a child? Thank you for laughing. In some states, they attempt to answer this question. Oh, was it civics or grammar? It's crazy. It drives me nuts, the emphasis on textbooks in this country. You know, for the price of a brand new textbook, I could buy 20 Scholastic books that would actually get a kid excited about reading. Kids are more likely to read if they're excited about reading. Have lots of books. There's tons of books in my classroom. I got big books. I got little books. I got scratch and snip books. I got pop-up books. Some kids don't like books. So you have to have other reading materials available. Get magazines. You know, Sports Illustrated, National Geographic, highlights. So the first thing I want us to think about when we're talking about access is to provide kids with plenty of choices. And I'm using kids in a general sense. All of us in here can be classified as kids. Carol Ann Tomlinson once said, if a student has a spark, better still a fire, a curiosity about a topic, learning is more likely for that student. And too many kids are looking at school like it's prison. You know, as Carl Jung once said, if there's anything we wish to change in the child, we should first examine it and see whether it's not something that could better be changed in ourselves. Our job as educators is to open up those minds and plant seeds that foster a lifelong love and growth of learning. So the second thing we have to always concentrate on when we're providing access is how to provide the interest in reading all the time. And that leads to the third point, which is to always make sure the kids have plenty of opportunities to read. I'm not a good reader because I liked reading growing up. I'm a good reader because I was surrounded by it constantly. I don't ever remember seeing my parents in my entire life without books in front of them. And so even though I hated reading, I was blessed to have reading around me constantly. We need to provide that access. We need to foster access, give the kids lots of choices, get them interested, and make sure they have opportunities to read. And then that gets us into the business of reading. You know, if students don't learn to read by third grade, there's less than a 25% chance of them catching up. I'm a big believer in an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. You know, we should prevent this from ever happening. We should invest as much as possible to make sure those little ones have that opportunity to become great readers. Now, people always ask me about reading. I always say learning to read is like learning to ride a bike. It becomes easier with experience, and we know experience leads to confidence. Well, that sounds simple enough. Remember this. People who say that's easy should be severely beaten. Anything is easy once you know how to do it. It's the getting to know how to do it that's the trick. So people always ask me, Danny, why don't people read? Well, there's two reasons. First of all, there's a condition known as illiteracy, which means they can't read. There's also a condition known as alliteracy, which means they won't read. Both are paralyzing, but I'll argue to you today, I don't really believe there is such a thing as illiteracy in America. I mean, there's different degrees of literacy. Let's say you're teaching third grade. You're not teaching third grade. You're teaching anywhere from 7th grade to caveman. I think one of the silliest things we strive for in American education is equality. Kids don't need to be treated equally. They need to be treated fairly. Some kids don't require a lot of extra attention. Some kids require a lot of extra attention. We've got to give every kid exactly what it is that they need. It's almost as ridiculous as the reading wars. I mean, I've been in higher education for over 20 years. They're still debating on how you teach a kid how to read. You got people over here that believe the way you teach a kid how to read is alligator, ball, cat, because that's the way we all speak, right? Then you got the people over here, Robin, I want you to take this book home, put it under your pillow, and when you wake up, you'll know how to read. And I'm being facetious because we know if you want to learn how to read, knowing the sounds of some of the blends is somewhat helpful, isn't it? Certainly is. And having opportunities to read for fun is somewhat helpful, isn't it? Certainly is, but we need a balanced approach. But this is what I learned as a teacher. If I got a kid that loves sitting there doing phonics worksheets, what should I do? Give them phonics worksheets. If I got a kid that loves sitting in the corner reading on her own, what should I do? Let her. School was built for them, not for me. Because we have to accommodate and realize there's lots of different types of learners in that classroom. And third, we can learn how to get help. Can I give you the best strategy I use? Use poetry. Every single day, no matter who I'm teaching, I read aloud at least 4 poems. It takes me less than 5 minutes. Think about that. Over the course of 180 school days, I've exposed my students to over 700 poems. So, to take care of business, we got to make it fun, we got to accommodate, and we always need to get help. And then, most importantly, we got to create a culture of reading every single day. Do you know what the building blocks of success are in schools, the most important ones? You need to get the parents' help. Children are just a reflection of their parents. So the first thing about creating a reading culture is to train those parents so that they have a reading culture at home. You need some point in the day where the family unit gets together and talks. Talk is not cheap. Talk is very, very valuable. We know that students that come from homes where a lot of talking is taking place do significantly better in school. And here's what's interesting. The research shows this. It doesn't matter what language is being spoken at home. It just matters that a lot of language is being spoken at home. Read in front of your kids. You're going to hear me preach this all the time. Kids ain't stupid. They don't see us reading, they're never going to be reading. All right, we need to make reading awesome. All right, so one of the things I tell teachers, reward the students with reading time. Hey, we do a good job, we get done with everything, I'll give you an extra 10 minutes to read later on. I'll have Australian Pete come in and read to you. I like to come in and read as an Australian guy, you know. I'll be like, "G'day mate, just got done putting a shrimp on the barbie. Your teacher said you want me to read to you." Kid's like, "Yeah, it's Australian Pete." It's me, all right? 2:15, I bring in grumpy old man. "Kids, shut up, I'm gonna read to you." Kid's like, "Yeah, it's grumpy old man." That one got me in trouble once. The parents like, "Did some mean old guy tell my kid to be quiet?" I'm like, "Oh, I won't invite him back." Oh, this is awesome. This is a wonderful government program. They have these in almost every single community. They got these buildings. Inside these buildings are rows and rows of books. Now, all you have to do is apply for a card for free. You can check these books out for 3 weeks. They're called public libraries, and they're completely underutilized, and they're the backbone of every single community. I mean, when you see a library closed down, I mean, close City Hall down before you close down the library. Library is where everything happens. There you go. I always think about, have any of you ever had a favorite student? 3 of you? Okay, great. We're late. I had a favorite. I've taught most of my career in South Central Los Angeles. I did teach in Houston, Texas for a little while. I taught 3rd grade, and my favorite student of all time was a little boy named Howard. And Howard was the son of a Baptist minister. And Howard's father spoke like Martin Luther King Jr., which meant Howard spoke like Martin Luther King Jr. So one day I was reading a book to the kids called Stuart Little by a guy named E.B. White. Write his name down. He's going to be big someday. E.B. White. You'd be scared. Some people write it down. And so after I read aloud a chapter, I always have the kids applaud the author. So the kids are applauding one day, and one little boy's like, "I like Stuart because he's little." And Howard stands up. He's like, "Don't you get it? Don't you get it? We all be little. We all be little. But someday, we be big. Like Mr. Big." And he pointed at me, and I realized, this child could lead a revolt. And Howard is the reason I became a teacher. I loved his unbridled enthusiasm, and I worried to death for him. Because next year, he was going to get Miss Hampton. And she was going to identify his enthusiasm as a discipline problem. You know, because Miss Hampton was a direct descendant of Satan. All right? And one of the most important things I learned, and everybody in here has to learn, is it's our job to provide people with strategies, because sooner or later, folks, all of us are going to have a Miss Hampton to deal with. You know, don't give people answers, give them ways to deal with problems, because they're always going to be there all the time. One of my mentors, a guy named Charlie Tremendous Jones, said, "You're the same today as you'll be in 5 years, except for 2 things, the people you meet and the books you read." Well, I'm telling you right now, you need to surround yourself with good people and good books every single day, and that's how we bring the joy back into education. The way I always ended class is the way I'll end this today. I used to always tell my kids, you know, education is valuable. This goes to what Misty said earlier, but it's execution that's priceless. Remember, folks, you make a difference each and every day. Thank you for all that you do. Enjoy the journey ahead of you. God bless you. Enjoy the rest of the conference today. Thanks, everybody.